Welcome back everyone, Mike McConville here one more time for Guitar Repair at String Tech. We have this gorgeous D-35 that Ron dropped off. There's a few things that need to be done. The action is very high, and we will be doing a partial refret, probably the first 5, maybe 6 frets. But before we get into this job, I wanted to kind of show you what we ended up with for tuning. So what we're looking at here is the 19th fret notes. The low E string is 18 cents sharp. Now this string needs to come down quite a bit, so I know we'll get rid of a lot of that sharpness just by lowering the action. What remains to be seen is how far back we can move that saddle to get rid of that. The A string, surprisingly, that's this 19th fret, perfectly in tune. The D string is 2 cents flat, and it looks like we're going to be able to come forward on that saddle to correct that. The G string is 12 cents sharp, and it also looks like we'll be able to move it back and down, certainly get rid of most of that sharpness. The B string is 2 cents sharp, and it's going to be coming down, so we'll probably get rid of that. We'll see as we go. And then the first string is 7 cents sharp, and it can also come down. I'm going to start there by correcting the bridge saddle and stabilizing the calibration and intonation. These are 13 to 56 at concert pitch. Before I pull that saddle out, I am scribing across that crown so that we have a point of reference as we reshape and recalibrate that saddle. The other thing that needs to be corrected on this is the curvature of the crown doesn't match the curvature of the fingerboard. Oh, that's a beautiful fit. Typical Martin factory fit. Not too tight, not too loose. So I'm going to take a picture of that for my own reference. We'll be putting the proper crown radius on that saddle first, so that line's going to disappear. I'll need to have that point of reference, string to string, all the way across. So as a point of reference, I am going to get a tracing off of that last fret. Checking that against the radius of the actual fret. I can see the second string sort of drops down lower than that radius. We are going to lower the saddle first, so we're going to end up, the saddle will be flat on top. I'm not taking it right down to the line, but I'll get fairly close to it. So I do this job on the radius disc sander for the drill press. The reason I do that is it rotates at 300 RPM, pretty slow. You want to get this very accurate, but you don't want to take it off too quick. So this is the picture that I took of the saddle before I cut that matching radius for the fingerboard. I've marked the location of each string. We have this map here that tells you how far back we need to go. So I'm referencing where the focal point was here. This is the low E, this is the high E. So you can see that low E was almost right to the back. So I am moving it right to the back. The A, which was the only string that was perfectly in tune, was pretty well dead center. But because we're lowering the action, we're going to need to move it forward a little bit. It would be slightly flat if we left it where it was. The D string was 2 cents flat, so I've moved it forward as well. So this is the G, and it was 12 cents sharp, and it was pretty well right in the center of the saddle. So I've moved that to the back of the saddle. Hopefully we'll be able to correct that 12 cents. Now the B string was right to the back edge, but because we lowered it, hopefully that will get rid of that 2 cents of sharpness. High E also was pretty close to the back of the saddle, but we're lowering it, so once again, we'll see how much we can get rid of that 7 cents of sharpness. So I've got it marked all the way across. This is where we want to end up. I will actually do this on the edge of the radius disc sander. I'll cut these 3, and then I'll cut from this side to scoop out these 3 strings. So the idea is you don't want to lower any of these strings because we have a perfect radius match to the fingerboard right now. So back to the radius disc sander. Get the A and the D string first. And then these three, should be able to get all three with one cut. Okay, back to the guitar. Let's see what this sounds like. So after our first adjustment, amazingly, we got rid of this 18 cents of sharpness. So the low E now, when we fret the 7th fret note and its corresponding 19th fret octave note, they're both in tune. The A, we made that adjustment we talked about a second ago. It came out great. The D, when we drop the string down, you reduce the amount of sharpness. Now what we have is 5 cents flat, and the G, after dropping it down, went from 12 cents sharp to 10 cents flat. I'll go over to the saddle in a second and show you what's going on. The B string was 2 cents sharp, it's now 4 cents flat. And then the high E, 7 cents sharp to 6 cents flat. So let me bring you in tight to the actual saddle itself and explain. We just squeaked by with this low E string. It's in tune, no issue. The A string is in tune, but what's happening with the D now is it's 5 cents flat, and as you can see, that is right at the leading edge. We will not be able to tune the D or the G with that original bridge slot. So we're going to make a cantilevered bone replacement to buy back a little bit more real estate in the intonation, those middle two strings. Now the B, when we dropped it down, it started out being 2 cents sharp, now it's 4 cents flat. Plenty of room to move forward within the confines of the original bridge slot, not an issue. And the high E, which was 7 cents sharp, after dropping it down, it's now 6 cents flat. But once again, we have lots of room to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and make a cantilevered saddle, and we'll come back for that third run and see what we got then. That saddle is fairly shallow, but we're not in the range of a neck reset yet, and I'd mentioned that to the customer when he was here. I'll walk you through this fabrication of the bone compensated replacement saddle. I'm just going to cut that to overall length, a little bit longer than we need. We can always trim it back. Getting a read on that original saddle thickness, 99 thou. Our replacement saddle is 125. Yeah, this has got to come down quite a bit. We'll get that done first. This is the radius that I am about to cut on the underside of that ledge. I'll do that on the disc sander. I just put a fresh piece of paper on there. I am going to turn on the dust collector because I don't want to breathe this stuff. Watch how quick I cut that radius. This was the radius we took off the crown, the original crown. I was really hoping we'd get away without having to change the nut, but it's not a bad thing because, you know, it came out as clean as you could possibly get it, not a sliver of wood. And we're changing those first 5, 6 frets anyways, so that makes it easier without having the nut to contend with when we level those new frets down to the height of the original frets. I am just getting ready to put that final fret in, which is the first fret in this case. But before I do, I wanted to kind of walk you through exactly how I did this fret job. First thing I do is cut this piece of fret wire a little bit longer than we need, so you got material to work with. Now with the disc sander foot driven, I'm flushing up each end. This is also foot driven. You just load that up with some Jewelry's Rouge. Now I buff each end is the next step. Now with an extra fine Sharpie, I'm marking the width of the fret between the binding. Now I'm clipping off the tang so that we have enough overhang to overlap that binding. Now that the tang has been clipped, I finished it off with this fine file. I've been using an auger file for years, but this is a Millwright's file I got from my father-in-law when he passed away. He willed me all his hand tools. Thank you for that, Tab. The clippers don't quite take off the whole extrusion, so I want to make sure that underside does not disrupt the seating of the fret. Okay, so next thing, so these are the original frets that came out, and I am just measuring the width of the tang. 32 thou. The tang on the replacement fret is 35 thou. So here's how I reduce the width of that combination of bead and tang so that we get a perfect press fit. This is a pair of end nippers that I blunted about, I don't know, 40 years ago. So I kind of lay them down on the table like that, and then I lean on them so that this crushes the bead and reduces the overall width of that tang and bead combination. Sometimes I get pretty drastic with this thing and reduce the width significantly, and that brings us down to 32 thou. So next, I do flex a little bit of a radius on this, kind of over radius it a little bit, so those outside edges are especially tight to the binding. Okay, so here's the next step. Now, I did show this in the previous Les Paul Custom Refret video on the ebony fingerboard fretting tips. Again, operative phrase is I flex that down a little bit, then I clip it off. Other side, flex it down a little bit, and clip it off. Now I'm back to the disc sander. I use my ultrafine Sharpie, and I'm bringing that back to pretty close to the final length. While I'm at it, I'll actually put that bevel on there as well. Back to the buffer. Now there's two more steps that I did on all of these frets before I sent them home. I dropped in with that Japanese saw and just made sure there was no obstruction in the fret slot. Then I followed up with this depth gauge, checking it all the way across, to make sure that we had enough depth to receive the depth of the tang on the new fret. And we definitely do. We have another millwright tool alert. So this hexagon chunk of brass is what I use to send that fret home. Now we're ready to edge dress. So now we just want to duplicate that bevel on the original frets. And because we cut this back the way we did, there's very little of the new frets projecting out past the binding. With a nice gentle motion, we can just breeze those frets down to their final length. And that'll do it. You can hear the file go silent when you've reached your destination. Still have a little more finessing to do yet. So other side. Gently brushing over the new frets with some 400 grit in the scrub block. This is the... So next I brush over those newly installed frets with the scrub block. This is 400 grit cloth back paper. Just getting ready to level the new frets, which are 46 thou, and we're going to level them dead even with those original frets. We're just breezing these down about 4 thou, but before we do that, we need to check the truss rod. I have checked the truss rod. When I lay that 10-inch straight edge on there and I go from the 1st to the 6th fret, there's no rocking, so this is dead straight. So we're safe now to go ahead and dress that down. So no dial calipers, no CNC machines, just the GPS tech deck and this leveling file that I send out in the fretting kits. We'll check it as we go, and as always, we move obliquely across the crown because the crown has a radius. It's not dead flat. The only way for you to follow that radius is to be able to move obliquely, and you cross hatch as you go. Kind of overlapping my strokes and going the opposite direction. So first we want to get that height correct. There we go. Beautiful. So now we take our Hosco crowning files and we just get rid of that sharpness. So because we went across the fret this way, the crown is now square, and the purpose of the crowning file is to get rid of that squareness. And that is what we're doing here. Here's one last peek at the cantilevered compensated bridge saddle. This is 13 to 56, at concert. And this is our compensated nut. I did end up fretting up to the 6th fret. And this is ready to go for the long haul. Here's our tuning test, starting with the low E. So that's the blessing and the curse of this clear tune tuner, is it picks up the traffic going by in the street. Okay, let's start again. The clear tune tuner doesn't want to tune a G string, so I'm switching over to the Peterson tuner for the 3rd, using the Peterson. Okay, we're back to the clear tune. Okay, the real tuning test, as you know, is just playing some chords. So let's go in the studio and play this beautiful D-35. Ron was saying I don't think he's ever left the house with it. He's just, he's so paranoid. And that's why I invented the String Tech leather padded, multi-adjustable guitar workstation.